Good morning. This has been long in the makings. We planned this about, a year and a half ago, and finally we're here. So we want to make the best of this time. This class this morning, actually we're going to kind of get to know each other, and you pick up on my style and decide if I look funny, and I'll decide if you look funny while we talk to each other. So as Brother Cole said, I work in the mental health and addiction field. I've got several licenses out there, and I work here at home and in Carmel, and that's not that important. Most of my work, though, the majority of it is online and in person with members of the church. And when I first started this venture, I looked at a hurting brotherhood. People who would come to service hurting, tell you they're fine at the door, and go home and hurt some more. And that kind of brought out something in me, and I asked the question, who's doing this? And I couldn't find anybody. So I decided, well, maybe it's me. So that's how I got kind of started in this. And since then, we've helped to groom 14 other members of the church, conservative members, who are working with me in this effort. And most of those are digital, spread all over the country. So I'm not here to promote that this week, but just to let you know that is available. And we in the Churches of Christ speak a special language. And most counselors, you've got to wade through a session or two before they kind of catch on what your framework is. But I want to spend our time this morning not talking about me or what I do, but I want to spend our time talking about an issue that is here in the church. And for a while, in the 50s and 60s, and on up until even recently, the focus was on building the church, meaning the local aggregate of God's people. And I'm afraid in that process, what we did is we shifted a lot of the work of the home into the work of the church. And the home then kind of became a secondary for a number of people. We leave it to the church to train our kids, to teach them the Bible, to teach them spiritual. We may, in some institutional churches, they may throw the recreational activities in there. And so the church becomes kind of the catch-all to take care of and to grow our families. We've had a disaster with that approach, and that is that homes are falling apart. When I first started preaching, the divorce rate was about 50% of homes. Half of them ended in divorce. It's much larger than that now. And to find an intact family among God's people, we have to look. I don't know the exact numbers, but they may be pretty low on intact families. So the question is, why are homes breaking up? Why are people who say I do, why do they don't? And we want to talk about that a little bit this morning, about husband-wife relationships in this segment, but specifically we're going to talk about secrets of a strong family. And I want to just say this, these PowerPoints are yours, however you choose to distribute those here. And there is a whole section I'm skipping in this, which goes through what the Bible says about marriage all the way to taking care of our elderly as an adjunct of the home. And there's a whole section in here with lots of Bible verses. I'm not going to go over that in this lesson. Just be aware it's on this PowerPoint, and if you load this, you'll see that first. But I'm going to get to the kind of the meat of what I really wanted to talk about, and to talk about 6 secrets of strong families. And when we look at what does it take to make your family strong, we know what it takes to break a family up. We can figure that out almost naturally. But what does it take to make your family strong? Man, I don't know what happened. Something did. How do I start this over? Okay. Here's where I am. I don't know how I got there. Yeah, we're way into it. Now this button right here,
Yeah, that's to the right.
don't hold it.
Or you can just hit the space bar on the keyboard if you want.
I'll hit the space bar. Okay, all right, technical. I didn't grow up in a technical age. Anybody else? And I haven't kept up. Okay, so we may have that happen more than once. All right, but I want to suggest to you the first thing about about what builds a strong home is having a commitment to each other. Often in the dating relationship, couples get together, they date, whether in person or online. Online is very popular today with members of the church. They may see each other 3 or 4 times before they actually say I do, but they've been online daily. And then they get married and they got all kinds of issues come with that. But whether online or in person, commitment is significant. In other words, are we committed to the relationship? Often what will happen in the in-person connections is that the dating situation gets into sexual expression or familiarity. When the kissing and the snuggling and all that stuff start, sometime the conversations end, or at least they're minimized. And the couple goes through a dating phase, get into a marriage phase, but they really don't know each other. And as a result, there are other things that come in here. God said or Jesus said, therefore what God has joined together, let not man put asunder. That's commitment. In other words, when you say I do, then that's it. That's a commitment. It's a solemn vow before God. Solomon said in Ecclesiastes, when you vow a vow before God, defer not to keep it, for I have no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou vowest. Better is it that thou shouldest not vow, than that thou should vow and not pay. Ecclesiastes chapter 5. And so in that, what we see is long ago, the importance of our word. And when we say that we are making a commitment, that's not a statement in time. That is an ongoing till death shall us part commitment. Now, when we make that kind of commitment, we don't know what the future holds. All we know is the one that holds the future. But when we make that commitment, we don't know what's coming up. We don't know if we're going to have clear sailing, if we're going to have health issues during this time, if we're going to have deaths or loss of something that's significant. We don't know. But what we do know is that we've made a commitment. And for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. That's the commitment. And what many people in our culture look at is, well, you know, if you're not able to get along, just get somebody else. Life's too short to be miserable with one. That's the philosophy of the day. But that's not God's philosophy. What God has joined together, let not man put asunder. Now, people have walked all over that passage in our day and time. Art thou bound to a wife? Seek not to be loosed. Are you loosed from a wife? Seek not a wife. And he said that during a present distress. However, if you're bound to a wife, don't look for ways to get out of your marriage. Don't look for ways to sabotage. And we'll talk more about that in just as we move on. Suppose you take a look at this car. I don't know what kind of car it is, but it looks kind of like something maybe Joe would drive, in addition to that Mustang he's got. But, all right, but that car looks decent. How many of you would like a car like that, and we'll sell it to you for $50? Now, it doesn't have a transmission in it. It doesn't have an engine, and it's got 500,000 miles on it. You still want it? You see, sometimes we pick based on outward appearance. And so the question is he handsome? Is she beautiful? That kind of thing. And what we do is we don't check out the quality of life. The proverb writer said that beauty is deceitful. It's vain. And beauty is going to pass over time. All of us are going to get a little older. I don't look like I looked when I was in my teens, thankfully. I don't have any more pimples. All right? But, yeah. But we all change over time. And with that, the commitment still continues. All right. The second thing I want to talk about is time together. Back in time, someone came up with this crazy phrase that it's not the amount of time, it's the quality of the time. And I want to suggest to you, you can't have quality of time without amount of time. That doesn't happen. So the time together, what do families do and what do they do together? Anybody remember the dinner table? In our family I grew up in, we all sat around the dinner table, and when you sat down and you ate, you also chatted. And we checked in on how was your day. Many families, I used to do an exercise with people, and I called it the family dinner table, and I want to know where did people sit at the dinner table. And a whole lot to that exercise. But I had to stop doing it, because what I found is that I was dealing with people that didn't sit down to dinner. What they did is they rushed in, they grabbed something, they rushed out. Dinner was maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and didn't necessarily eat together. Well, many families kind of have their homes as kind of a stop and go, a drive-through. And instead of spending quality time, and when they do sit down in this day and age, we've got these things pulled out. And we are together alone. And these things get in our way. What many families have done, some families, I've suggested to them, when you come in the door, you need a basket at the front of your door, and all your electronic devices go in that. And if you need them during the time, put them on whatever you need to put them on. But this is family time. This is dedicated time. This is what we do because we are a family. And don't rob your family time and have it interrupted with your digital devices. We spend time together. The Bible says, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Here is a passage about spending time. What do? We cleave together. You don't do that without spending time together. And so the word cleave means to be glued together, that we're a team. We operate together. We work off of each other. We work with each other, and so forth. And we are a team. And then he talks about the one flesh relation, which has to do with several things, intimacy basically. And by the way, this week as I talk about intimacy, I'm not talking about sex. People sometimes say, have you been intimate? And what they mean is, have you been sexual? I'm not talking about that. Intimacy is the connection we have with each other. 960 times in your Old Testament, the Hebrew word yada is mentioned, referenced. 900 of those times it's talking about God. And 60 or more of those is talking about relationship of humans. And it's the word for intimacy. Now with that, I don't have a sexual relationship with God, but I do have an intimate relationship with Him. And what that means is that closeness, that bonding, that oneness that we have with God, that we have that kind of relationship. That's the relationship that's supposed to be in the home as well, cleaving to one another. And the one flesh, yes, that involves sexual contact, but it's not limited to that. And so I suggest that husbands and wives work together as a team. To say one person's name is to say the other. My family, my mother's name was Wilma, and when you mention Wilma, Wiley came up next. That's my dad's name. It's also the name of a preacher you had here, who was named after him. But those names go together. To say one is to say the other. To think of one is to think of the other. Where one stopped, the other one started. They had each other's back. And that's what relationships are about, leaving father and mother and cleaving to our wife. Now, see then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Now here's what happens in family life, how husbands and wives, how we can build stronger relationship. We spend time together. We don't plan all these activities that are going to scatter us everywhere. We spend time together. We may do some of those activities together. We do this with our grandkids as well. Several of you look like you may have grandchildren. I know I do. And we spend time with family. You know, families need to have family traditions. In the Old Testament, you had a number of feast days. You had a number of special days. Well, aside from the fact of what those days were about, there was the fact that there were periodic times that folks came together and did some things together. Many times that was family. Passover was a family time, among other things. And so people came together and they did things. And the Old Testament's full of that. Why? God was honored first. But there was something else that did. That bonded the family to where now we can talk of God when we pass down the way, when we come through the lintels of our door. There's something posted. Time together. Now, in our culture, we have such times usually that are traditional times, Thanksgiving, Christmas time, holidays, all that kind of thing. But a lot of times the families don't get together anymore like that. What happens is that time together gets breached. And as a result, the family unit, the family bond starts coming unglued. All right, we are to redeem the time. And there's a reason for that, because the days are evil. You don't believe the days are evil? Try to hunt up a definition for family. There's a whole bunch of them today. The Bible just has one. But there's a lot of people who can't even figure out what a family is anymore. Can't figure what their role is. The days are evil. And the church and God's message is under severe attack today. That's a call for us to be even more vigilant as we spend time together as families. Strong families make time to be together. Weak families spend time on other things. Other things become more important than our family time. And what happens is those family ties are somewhat severed. When 1,500 children were asked, what do you think makes for a happy family? You know what? They didn't list cars, they didn't list money, or a nice house. They simply answered, doing things together. That's what makes for a happy family, doing things together. I'm sure all of us could go down memory lane and remember times maybe we went fishing with somebody in our family, or we strolled out in the woods, or we had a picnic, or we did some kind of thing with our families. And while we have those memories, the question is, do the generations after us have those memories? I want to tell you, what we do will bring either a blessing or a curse on our family. And generational it is. I read in the Old Testament where God did some special thing to some wicked people. And he said, I'm doing this because of your father Abraham. Actually, several generations back. I'm blessing you because of what he did. God blesses us, but also I will visit the sins of the fathers upon the third and fourth generation. I used to think that passage looked kind of, how fair is that? Well, it's not about fairness. It's about patterns that are set in motion. Let's take an example. Here's one generation, and the mom and dad divorce. The kids are impacted. Now they've got two homes, and maybe even more than that. And they're out here trying to figure out their safety has been breached. And they're trying to figure out how to get along in life while mom and dad are trying to figure out how to get over their hurt. And these kids grow up and they marry. But what they have learned in their home of origin is home may be a safe place for a while, but it's not something you can count on. That message is taught, and it goes down generationally. And so the third and fourth generation, it takes that long in a family for the divorce of a previous generation to work its way through the family if there's not another divorce. Then it starts over at that point. That's pretty serious stuff. So if we want to mess our families up, let's have a squabble of some sort, and let's head down the road, each go our own way. And it's not just about us. Our family is involved, and there's the trickle effect that goes down. Let's take David, for example. David and his sin with Bathsheba, and other things in his life with Amnon and Absalom. What do we see with David? What David taught is if you want something, go take it. If you want another man's wife, go take her. That's not a good example. Now, he had his jollies with Bathsheba. A lot of issues there. But the effect of that was Absalom learned a lesson. If you want something that you shouldn't have, just go take it. I want my daddy's throne. And so he goes and runs his daddy out of Jerusalem, and David's on the run for his life, and Absalom now wants to be the king. He taught that to another son, Amnon. If you want something you shouldn't have, hey, figure out a way. Well, I'd like to have my half-sister, Tamar. And so he goes and he has Tamar. How did they learn to step over that boundary? I want to suggest to you that while they were responsible for it, they learned you can step over boundaries, and they learned it from their daddy. Doing things together. Appreciation is another thing that is needed in strong families. As a matter of fact, there are 7 desires of the heart that every person wants. I don't have this on a slide. I'm going to try to recall it. The first desire of the heart, of every heart, male or female, is to be heard. Are you listening to me? To be heard. Second desire that I would mention is to be affirmed. In other words, to be appreciated. The third one I would suggest is to be chosen. I'm the one and only. Another one is to be blessed. To be touched. That's where hugging comes in. Touched. You know, if a baby is not touched, they can die for no other reason except failure to thrive. Not touched. The human touch has power. Moms and husbands and wives, families need to touch each other. There's value in touching. To feel bonded, connected, and the human touch does that. That's why I suggest husbands and wives need not to forget how to hold hands, how to put their arms around each other, how to give each other a hug, or to tease each other. Touch. Touch is vital to relationship. And there are some others, but I've gotten off track and I forgot where my list was, so I'll bring those to you. Deb, you took notes. How many did I mention? 4? 5. All right. I don't remember what I mentioned, so I won't go back over that. But see me later. There's 2 more. All right. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. If we are not a Christian at home, we may not be a Christian anywhere. We may be a fake. Our families will see whether we are true Christians or not by the way we treat each other when the doors are closed. Now, as I've already mentioned, I talk a lot in pretty intimate detail with people that are members of the church that are struggling with issues. And I hear it all the time. Well, he's cussing at me all the time. Well, she's calling me vulgar names. She's making fun of me. I hear it all the time. That kind of language doesn't build us up. It tears us down. That kind of language says something about the quality of our character or lack thereof. And so we need to be careful that with our appreciation that we don't let corrupt communication come out of our mouth. Corrupt, the word corrupt means polluted. It means stinky garbage, if you would. That's not in your dictionary. But it's like, this smells putrid. Man, that stinks. I don't want to smell that. Okay? And I don't want to hear that either. So we don't have that kind of conversation coming out of our mouth. But what is coming out of our mouth is not that which tears down, but that which is good for edifying, that which builds up. Encouraging each other. Not just trying to destroy. And it's about giving grace to those that hear. In the family, we need to do that. I want you to succeed. I want you to do your best. I want you to encourage me to be the same way. That's the kind of communication we have. Support, teamwork, working together in our efforts. Strong families build one another up, and weak families tear each other down. You know what the number one predictor of divorce is? Someone says cheating. Well, while that's a predictor, it's not the number one. You know the number one? Disrespect. Not valued. Disrespect. Treated like an old shoe. Put on a shelf. Not being included. Discounted. You want to lose a marriage, that's how you lose it. You disrespect the one you're married to. Well, the opposite of that would be to respect them. Just like Aretha Franklin told us. Okay? All right. When's the last time that you said something like this to each other? You know, honey, if I had to do it all over again, I'd still marry you. Or something like, I couldn't get you out of my mind today. I will always love you. I can always count on you. I'm so proud to be married to you. I'm sorry. I was wrong. You make every day brighter for me. Heard anything like that lately? Those are the words that build up. Those are the words that edify. Those are the words that encourage building the relationship. But unfortunately, about 90% of our communication is negative about what's wrong and what stinks and how everything doesn't go my way. Christians ought to be different. We ought to be those, and while there is room for criticism, and there needs to be, but it doesn't need to be all the time. It needs to be balanced. As a matter of fact, if we balance the criticism with the praise and the criticism have more power. One mother wrote saying, each night we go into the children's bedroom and give each of them a big hug and a kiss, and then we say, you are really good kids, and we love you very much. We think it's important to leave that message with them at the end of the day. I do too. What do you think? We've all made it through today. You're loved. You're wanted. You're included. And you know what? Those words stick with a kid. And then later on, as they grow up and they get in their teen years, it's like they feel wanted in this family, not like they're a burden. The one young man I'm talking to, really nice young man, and I'm talking with, and he grew up in a home where he was just taught he was a piece of garbage. That's not the term he used. And he grew up thinking he had no value and no worth. And you know what he did? He got in trouble at school. He beat some other kids up. He did a whole bunch of stuff. He ended up in juvie. And there were some good members of the church, an elder down in Texas. He and his wife decided, you know, we're going to take this kid and adopt him and help him to be what we know he can be. And they did. You couldn't find a nicer young man today. The quality was already there, but it wasn't polished. The parents tried to destroy it. The next one, and this is one of the main ones that people talk with me about, communication. We miss each other. I'm going to give you this thing that you can write it down and remember this forever. Men and women aren't alike. It's true. The old movie Camelot, stage play too, King Arthur said, as Merlin once told me, don't worry what women are thinking. They don't do it very often. Now that doesn't fly very right in our political culture, does it? And I don't believe that is right. But what he was emphasizing there is he didn't know how to handle a woman. He didn't know how to deal with relationship. Communication. There is a back door here somewhere in case I need to run. All right? But women take more words to say a thing and communicate than men do. That doesn't mean that women have flappy mouths and all that. But what it does mean is men are usually short and terse and to the point. And women, on the other hand, work at it a little differently. Neither one is wrong. But the two need to learn to get along together. And communication doesn't mean I turn off the sound. What it means is I listen. That's the other one, Deb, listen. It goes on that list. To listen. Hear what the other person's saying. And listen to it. Listen what they're saying. All right. Talked with a couple yesterday. A very ugly session. And her big thing was, you're not hearing what I say. And when I get close to what you need to deal with, which was right, then what you do is you divert and run and attack me. That's how they communicate. Unfortunately, that's tearing them right down the middle. They got some really good things about their marriage. But they got some bad things is they won't deal with what the issues are. It is hard to live in your house with an elephant in the room. If there is an elephant, and by that I mean something that we just avoid talking about. We talk around it, we laugh, we do a whole bunch of stuff, but we're not going to talk about the issue that is here that needs to be talked about. When that happens, our family gets sicker and sicker and sicker until something pops. Issues are not always fun to address or to talk about, but they need to be talked about. One of the major issues that is in a marriage is that husbands and wives need to repent to each other. Here's how it works. We date, we get physical, we may go way too far, and then our solution is we say I do, and that means all is forgotten. Does it? If we have been immoral before marriage, have we ever repented to our mate about being immoral with them? Does I do mean it's forgiven? Or do we need to say, you know what? That was wrong. And although I'm glad you're my mate, we need to make that right before God. We sinned against God when we did this. And we need to make that right with God and each other. And I hear that very rarely that's ever happened. Because we have this idea that I do means, okay, it's all fixed. It's not. It's not. Communication. How we talk to each other. The tone of our voice. The cadence of our words. The attitudes we have or don't have as we're talking with each other. That says something. Did you know you can talk without saying anything? How'd somebody say that? Actions speak louder than words? Communication. How do we communicate? How do we communicate? A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a framework of silver, the proverb writer said. A spiritual faith. Families need to be built on a spiritual foundation. Here's a song from Solomon. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman wakes but in vain. What is that telling us? That tells us to build our family on a solid foundation. We cannot speak for other families, but we can speak for ours. As Joshua said long ago, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The priority and the value in this family is serving the Lord, and everything else comes under that. Now, if we remember that, then we can have success in our home. One study showed that people who attend church, and I would say worship or assembly, because church is not, we use the word church wrong. Someone says, I'm going to church. Well, stand up in church for me. No, I'm going to worship. I'm going to fellowship with the Lord and the saints. That's where I'm going. I'm not going to church, which, is that a destination? What is that? Anyway, that's another lesson. All right. But people who attend services, even once a month, increase their chances of staying married. Religion provides couples a shared sense of values, ideology, and a purpose in life. In other words, there's something to aim for. There's a goal. There's a target. And then I want to finally mention today that strong families are built expecting they may need to cope with crises. Crises will come. They come in many forms. People get sick. Family members get sick, and we need to care for our family members. Those that don't care for their own have denied the faith, and they're worse than an infidel. That's what Paul said. So there's times we have to care for our own. And that doesn't mean go stick them out in a home somewhere. Sometimes it does mean that. But it doesn't mean that because that's what's convenient for me and I don't want to be involved. Taking care of our own. Coping with crises. People have accidents. Sometimes those are temporary and people get over them in a little time. Sometimes they're more permanent. And if we promise to love our mate in sickness and in health, for better or for worse, sometimes the worst is a disease, other health issues, or an accident or injury. And we still care for each other. That commitment is still there. That bond is still there. David said this, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return thither. I think that was David, maybe in Job. The Lord gave, the Lord's taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Job 1:21. what he's really saying there, and I don't think that he was accurate in his philosophy, because the Lord didn't take it away, Satan took it away. But what we learn from this is Job's attitude, that whatever's going on in my life, good or bad, that's all right. That's all right. Back in 1997, I had stage 4 cancer, and I thought I was going to die. And during that time, I was faced with a dilemma. And that is, how am I going to face this thing that may take me out? This may be it. And what I finally decided is, Art, it's time to practice what you preach. And so I turned my cancer over to God. If I live, I'll live for him. If I die, I will show Christian people how a Christian dies. Either way, I win. Obviously, God thought I had something else to do. So I stayed around. But coping with crisis. Sometimes families break up when the unexpected happens. Are we there for the good as well as the bad times with each other? Do we support and encourage each other? Now is the time. Best time to get started is now. The best time to ask God for help is now. And the best time to start is on our knees with an open heart, asking God to help us to have the kind of home he wants. It is time that we put some quality into how we build the home. It's not a matter of we just go from day to day and every day is yesterday and every day is tomorrow. There needs to be a plan. What is the plan for my home? What's the plan for your home? And are we going to stay where we are in this, or are there targets and goals we need to aim for in this relationship? I'm going to talk about mission statements in the next lesson. But I believe every home needs to know why it exists. I ask people, why are you married? And sometimes they just look at me funny like they don't know the answer. I think sometimes they don't. Why are you married? Why'd you choose each other? And I just get these deer in the headlight looks sometimes. I'll talk about that in the next lesson. But that's important to know. And it's important to ask the Lord to guide and to help us in this process. The time is not tomorrow. The time's today. The time is when you go home after this service, or you get the opportunity to talk to your spouse. If you need some repenting to do to each other, that's the time to do it. The time is, if we need to pick out some directions of what our targets are, what is our strategic plan for this year? What are we trying to accomplish? Not just to get through the day, but to make the day meaningful, that we might redeem the time and have this family to be that solid oasis. Final point. The prodigal son left home, and we have all kinds of lessons about him and about his brother. But one thing about that father is he had trained his boys where they never forgot where home was. Even though they may go astray, as the prodigal did, and in attitude as the elder brother did, they knew where home was, and they knew they had a loving parent who cared about them and would take the time to be there for them both. If that's all we accomplish in our homes, we've accomplished a great deal. But it's going to take a team, not a couple that's trying to break each other up, but people who are working together in the home to be like God wants it to be. I thank you for your time, and we'll take a little pause here.